येषां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोतं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि। Namaste. Welcome to KYG or Kaivalya Yoga Gurukulam. For the next class in the Yoga Sutras, today we shall study the 5th Sutra on the banks of a holy confluence of 3 rivers. The 3 rivers are Kaveri, Bhavani and Amrita. The river Amrita has now gone underground. There is a very beautiful and powerful temple here. He is known as the Sangameshwarar, the Lord of this Triveni. We'll explore this temple in another video. But for now, sitting on the banks of this beautiful river confluence, let us explore this beautiful sutra, which goes like this. This is the 5th sutra of the 1st chapter, and the sutra goes like this. Vṛttayaḥ, pañcatayyaḥ, kliṣṭā'kliṣṭāḥ. Vṛttayaḥ, pañcatayyaḥ, kliṣṭā'kliṣṭāḥ. What does that mean? The vṛttis are of 5 categories: binding and redeeming. The vṛttis are of 5 categories: afflicting and non-afflicting. So there are different words to explain kliṣṭā. Kliṣṭā is affliction, kliṣṭā is that which binds you. So, in continuation from the previous sutra, now we come to the actual subject matter. Like I said, the previous 4 sutras were a summary, a broad summary. But now we get down where the tire meets the road, and from now it will begin. Everything will be divided into types, categories, and so on and so forth. So brace yourself for an in-depth analysis of what is going on inside here. This is not done by a modern psychologist. This was explored, studied, and the knowledge was shared many thousands of years ago by this divine sage Patanjali, who understood the art, the science, and the mystery, if you will, of healing, of both physical illnesses and mental illnesses. Vṛttayaḥ, in this aphorism, vṛttayaḥ means vṛttis, all the impressions and modifications. Pañcatayyaḥ, pancha means 5. Pañcatayyaḥ means 5 types or 5 categories of vṛttas. Kliṣṭā, akliṣṭā. Kliṣṭā means afflicting, and akliṣṭā is that which is not afflicting. How do we understand this? How can the same vṛttis be binding and redeeming at the same time? The very same type of vṛttis that can bind you and redeem you. We will explore in the next sutra on. Patanjali will talk about exactly what those 5 types are. But in this sutra, a relatively short sutra, because I don't want to reveal what is in the next sutra now, but in this we have to understand how vṛttis are both binding and redeeming, how they are afflicting and non-afflicting. What kind of vṛttis bind us? Now let us take this example. or rather this perspective. If I think I am the doer, if I own my actions as my actions, own my thoughts as my thoughts, own my emotions as my emotions, then I am bound to those actions, I am bound to the results of those actions, I am bound to my emotions, I am bound to the results of those emotions, and so on. And therefore, these kind of vṛttis, where I take ownership, keep me bound. So, Vyasa in his commentary says these are the vṛttis that bind you into karmic cycle, into karma. You end up doing more actions, more karma, and because I want to redeem myself, so I'm going to do this. When you say I'm going to do this, I own this, I need the result of this, and therefore I get bound into this. So these kind of actions, or vṛttis rather, are binding in nature. Now you might say, wait a minute, aren't these really my actions? My thoughts, what is going in my head, aren't they mine? And I would respond saying that is exactly the problem. In the last sutra, what did we hear? What did we learn? The seer begins to identify himself with these thoughts and emotions. So when you say, wait a minute, this is my body, I have my thoughts, I have my emotions, then from a yogic perspective, I would say that is exactly the problem. You have identified yourself, your true self, with the body. You have limited that infinite potential within you to the limitations of the body. You have limited the infinite potential of your thought to your thought. And therefore you, when I say you, I mean I, so the I in us, is now confining this infinite potential within me based on what I have studied, what culture I come from, what are my beliefs, and therefore this is who I am. I define myself and then I live as if that is my identity. That is what the previous sutra explained. But in this sutra, we analyze that these kind of vṛttis are binding in nature. They bind us because then I try to redeem it, redeem a wrong action, if you will, by doing the right action, and I'm caught between right and wrong. The problem is owning it. So then what kind of vṛttis can redeem us then? Vṛttis that are liberating in nature, vṛttis that do not afflict us. When I become a witness and not own my thoughts, I watch them go by. I watch these impressions come and go. I don't own them. Then these impressions and these vṛttis do not bind me into further actions and drag me into a web of unending action and reaction, thought and consequences. When I meditate on the I am principle and I cause vṛttis like I am God, I am not different from God. Mano buddhi ahankara chittani naham. Aham nirvikalpo nirakara rupo vibhutyacha sarvatra sarvendriyanam. If I sing songs like I am the nirvikalpa, I am the formless, I am the attributeless, I am the infinite potential, I am Sat, the truth, I am Chit, consciousness, I am bliss, Ananda, then the little I in you begins to free itself and begins to reflect the real self, the Purusha, the Ishvara, begins to get reflected. And so those kind of vṛttis, those kind of thoughts, those kind of emotions begin to liberate you from the otherwise binding thoughts and actions. This was beautifully analyzed and taught to us by the ancient sages. The path of devotion, for example, which is relatively easier for most of us because we can relate with emotions. when I fall in love with my Shiva concept, I imagine a Shiva who is constantly lost in meditation. Because if I think of that Purusha and Ishvara, beyond form, beyond name, there is nothing for me. The mind loses itself in its abstractness. But if I worship, if I revere, if I meditate and contemplate on a name and a form with the qualities of the supreme infinite principle, then my chitta begins to absorb that, become that very supreme principle, and therefore the vṛttis such as those begin to liberate me. Now you begin to understand, or should begin to understand and appreciate, why they had 108 names praising the divine. Why do we sing songs praising the divine? Why did the ancient sages and saints, including Adi Shankara, compose poems that intrigue our innermost core, bring out a deep emotion of love? What happens at that time is those kind of vṛttis, those kind of impressions, those kind of feelings begin to liberate us. And those are akliṣṭā. Akliṣṭā. They are non-afflicting. They are also vṛttis because they are impressions, they are also thoughts, they are also emotions. But those thoughts, those emotions are liberating. These thoughts, this belongs to me, this person belongs to me, this is my wife, my child, my home, my property, my job, my life, my past, my future. I grab and hold on to it, and therefore I am bound here. But on the other hand, I create vṛttis where I say I belong to the divine. I am but an instrument and the divine energy flows through me. I am but a caretaker, I am but a gardener. I give up the sense of ownership. That is why we go to a temple and bow our head. Our head is the sign of ego. So in Tamil, there is a very beautiful line written by a saint called Manikavachakar in what is popularly known as Shiva Puranam. So that line goes like this: Shiram kuvivar ongu vekkum. Siram kuvivar. Siram kuvivar means the one who bows the head down. That means brings down this idea of ownership. I am nobody. When that I goes, then ongu vekkum, then the real self rises. That means then he raises your head up. Which head does he raise? The same head up? No. When you bow down, then the God raises the real self up. Ongu vekkum. That is the beauty of that line. So the idea is for us in this sutra is for us to contemplate and meditate what are the qualities of my vṛttis that I entertain. What are the qualities of the television shows that I watch? What is the quality of the conversations that I have? Are these creating impressions, vṛttis, that are binding in nature, or are they creating impressions and vṛttis that are freeing in nature? So at this point, Patanjali says they are all vṛttis. The seer identifies himself with these vṛttis which we learnt in the last sutra. But here he says when he identifies certain vṛttis are binding, this same category of vṛttis can be also redeeming. So in the next sutra, when we study the types of categories, we will find in each type there will be binding and redeeming. So what happens when we study sutras like these, aphorisms like these? We begin to introspect, we begin to become mindful of not just the words and actions, but we begin to question the fundamental philosophy on which our lives are based. Am I the doer? And if I am the doer, then I am bound to my actions. I am bound to my karma. I want to leave you with this thought, my dear friends. Many of us think, I need liberation. I don't need to be born again for those of us who have understood this philosophy to a certain extent, we say, I don't want any more rebirth again. I want liberation. I want to experience the infinite and never come back to this world. Guess what? As long as we entertain vṛttis such as these, then liberation is far, far away. Then how does one get liberation? How does one get that freedom? When you begin to create vṛttis saying, I was never bound, I was never born, I will never die. Aham nirvikalpo nirakara rupo vibhutvacha sarvatra sarvendriyanam. I was always the formless, infinite. Who is talking? Not Sundar is not talking this. Sundar can never be formless. Sundar is one of the false identification of the Purusha. So Sundar listens to this voice that sings, na punyam, na papam. There is no virtue, no vice, no birth, no death. Eternal principle, I am truth, consciousness, divine bliss. Sundar listens to that. Those vṛttis keep forming in the chitta of Sundar, and therefore the chitta begins to appreciate that. And slowly Sundar loses his identity, and what remains is Purusha. What remains is Ishvara. So from vṛttis we enter ekagra, and from ekagra, one-pointedness, we enter into that state where Ishvara is completely absorbed in his self. That is the purpose of yoga. That is the path of yoga. That is the beauty and the power and the magnificence of yoga. It will take you and I back to our true home. At this point, let us understand that there are 5 categories of vṛttis, and these vṛttis can bind us and can also liberate us, can afflict us and can be non-afflicting. Vṛttayaḥ, pañcatayyaḥ, kliṣṭā'kliṣṭāḥ. As always, thank you so much for watching and giving me this divine opportunity to share these ancient teachings from places that have inspired thousands of saints and sages over so many, many centuries. It is indeed our good fortune that we once again get to revive these teachings at these holy places. Stay blessed and inspired as always. I'll see you in the next class. Namaste.
Kaivalya